Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new Haolonggood release to take a look at. We've got ourselves another ceratopsian in the line, as we have the Kosmoceratops. Again, in 1/35th scale, this is probably going to be one of their smaller ceratopsian releases, but it does look pretty good. Again, as far as what we can see on the front of the box, you can take notice to the fact that we do, as always, have two different paint variants, one bright, one a bit more on the dull side, actually quite dark, I would say, when it comes to this one. And then if you turn the box around, you can see it's the same thing, of course, on both sides. And then, of course, also up here on the top, we've got, a few figures. You can't really get too many on a box this small, so we've got 6 different releases from Haolonggood up here on the top. And of course, up there on the top, you can see quite a few of the ceratopsians in the line, which is really cool. And then down on the underside, you've got yourself some dinosaurs that would like to make those ceratopsians their meal. But again, really nice looking box, pretty much your standard when it comes to a Haolonggood release. So let's pop these boxes open and check them out. Here they are, and they definitely look really, really good. Like, no surprise there at all. I think Haolonggood is absolutely one of the best companies out there currently producing dinosaur figures, and they hammer them out with relentless speed. We just get so many figures all the time. And this is one species of ceratopsian that I feel like we don't get near as often as you would expect, because it has a pretty darn unique look to it. You would kind of expect us to get them more than we do, but we really don't. And I think they've done a very good job on both of these. This one specifically, when I had originally seen the images of the prototype, I was like, well, it looks pretty good, but I just feel like the paint kind of looked a little flat, maybe a little bit too dull in the original images, but here in hand, it actually looks way better than I was expecting it to, which is straight out of the gate a huge plus for this one. I think that one really does look very nice and is actually a contender to be my favorite of the two, but this one is just so beautiful. I love the red-orangish tones that we have for that one. I think that looks really neat. Regardless, let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look, and we'll check both of them out from there. So we'll begin with the red-orangish version, just because I feel like the brighter colors on this one will show the detail off a little bit better. But if you start here in the head sculpt, you can see the head sculpt looks really nice. You've got, again, those quite vibrant looking tones of color as far as the red orangish tones that we have. You can also see that we have very nice fine detail here in the face. Pretty fine looking skin texture as you move down, especially closer to the jawline. But as you lead up here toward the horns, you can see the scales increase in size a little bit. As you move through the head sculpt, you can see quite a bit of variation to the scale detail as you move pretty much everywhere. And they've painted it in a really nice way where it highlights all of the detail in a very realistic way. First of all, one thing I love about both of these figures is the dark wash is back again for these, and I think it looks so good on both of them and really nicely makes the detail pop here in the face. But as you move up here and you run along the frill, you can see that there's like a dark grayish tone that kind of falls along the spikes of the frill, and you can see they've nicely dry brushed those out with a lighter gray, so that where the darker tones are, you can see that that is dry brushed with a lighter tone, which looks really good. You can see that light grayish tone also highlights all of the spikes moving along the course of the frill of our ceratopsian, even those very unique looking ones that we have up here on the top of the head. And as you move over to the other side of the head, you can see again very nice and consistent when it comes to the paintwork here for the figure. You can see even some darker tones as you move up here in the snout toward the nostrils. The beak is painted with a nice darkish tone, kind of like a very dark gray, and then dry brushed with a lighter gray, but it's not a super light gray, just enough to really make, again, the detail pop, I think, a little bit. You can definitely see it right there. We also have a black tone that sort of runs through the eye area and then out toward the snout as well, which is pretty cool. The horns on the top of the head of our ceratopsian as well are painted very nicely, where they start out with a darker tone and then transition to a lighter tone as you lead out toward the tips of the horns, which looks pretty cool. You also have some beautiful blues up here in the frill of our Kosmoceratops, and you can see they definitely look really good. Definitely makes this area stand out on our ceratopsian. And then there's also a little more of that reddish tone, that red orange there, kind of showing up in the center of the blues. As you move back here down into the neck, you can see some creasing and wrinkling right there. You can see the seam where the head was actually connected, but it's in a decent spot where it's not super noticeable. You can see right there, like you don't even really see it at all. But you can see we have a nice lighter tone for the lower jaw. As you move back into the neck, we continue to have that light tone, but we also have some of the reddish tones kind of showing up slightly there, which you can see. As you move up here into the body, you can see that the skin texture remains pretty subtle, pretty small, and at the same time very crisp and vibrant, which is definitely nice. And you can really see how that dark wash pops as you move through the course of the figure. Like, it definitely makes all of the details stand out, and you can see some osteoderm, like larger scales, as you move up a little bit further. As you move down into the front leg, you can see some creasing there in the joint of the elbow. Very smooth transition as we move from the reddish tones to the light tone there on the back of the legs, which is really good. As you move down into the foot sculpt looks quite nice. You can see the toes sculpted out, and we have the nails painted with a black, and the black has a little bit of a satin shine to it, which is definitely a good thing. As you move up into the stomach, you can see we do have that lighter tone that we have for the underbelly kind of moving up and overtaking the side of the dinosaur. And again, that transition is incredibly smooth as you move up into the reddish tones. Like, that is one of the nicest and smoothest transitions I think I've ever seen. But as you lead here along, you can see some of the skin stretching off of the stomach, a little bit of the skin kind of wrinkling back there behind the front leg, and again that dark wash here at play in the stomach. We also have some patterning on the top of the ceratopsian, as we have a black that sort of stripes and patterns through, and you can see it also kind of breaks up as it leads out here toward the side of the dinosaur. We've got the hip bone right there, nice big muscular thigh for our ceratopsian. As you move down, you can see the knee on the front of the leg, again really nice transitioning as you move down when it comes to the coloration. You can also see we have a darker tone for the foot, just like we saw on the front leg. This foot is obviously leaving the ground as the dinosaur is taking a step, so the foot is picking up off of the ground. Again, the toes look great, and we also have the nails painted with that glossy black. As you move up here toward the tail, you can see some creasing right behind the thigh. As you lead out, you've got a really nice curve for the tail of our Kosmoceratops. We continue to have that striping moving out along the course of the tail, and you can see that we have like a row of scoots moving along the spinal column on top of those osteoderms that you can see pretty frequently showing up on the top of the Kosmoceratops. On the underside, you can see again that nice light tone that also shows off the nice fine skin texture of the underside. We do have a cloaca present, and you can see some beefiness to the stomach region of our Kosmoceratops. And then if we turn the dinosaur around, you're really not going to see a whole lot of difference on this side compared to the first side, because it's not in any kind of like a crazy dramatic position or anything. It's just kind of trotting along, it looks like. So the only really big difference that you're going to see over here would be the positioning of the legs. The head's pretty straightforward, so you don't see much in the way of a difference there. You can see that the legs are just positioned differently, especially with the rear leg on this side. You can see how it's taking a pretty far step forward, and then this leg is obviously picking up off of the ground. You can see the toes are currently in the process of leaving the ground as the dinosaur again continues to walk along. But the sculpt looks absolutely fantastic, and the paintwork does as well on this. This is, again, it's pretty tough to say for sure, but I would definitely say this is my favorite of the two when it comes to this gorgeous Kosmoceratops. But that's not to say that this is a bad one, as we have a very dark gray for this one as far as the majority of the tones of color go. I would almost say actually a black in certain spots, but it's been hit with a nice light grayish dry brushing. It's, again, not a super light gray, but light enough that you can see it, and it does help to highlight all of the detail, which sort of gives it more of a dark gray visual than a black. But the dinosaur primarily, of course, is going to be the same sculpt. I don't notice anything that's different sculpt-wise on this one compared to the first one. So what that means is we really only need to go over the paint application on this one. And again, we have the very dark tones abundant through the course of the face. You can see a light gray that's dry brushed the horns out, again, just like we saw on the other one. There is a little variation of color in the eye area, which is actually almost so subtle you don't even notice it. Almost looks like a purplish tone in the eye socket area. The eye is painted with a white and then a nice big black pupil. Also has a nice gloss coat, same as the other one. Again, that gloss coat definitely giving it that very nice realistic eye shine. The light gray has dry brushed out the detail of the beak as well. And then as you move along the course of the frill of the ceratopsian, same thing, again with the light gray dry brushing out all of the detail. I can kind of see like some variation of color, especially running along the outer edge there of the frill. It almost looks like we have a little bit more of that same kind of purplish brown type tone that we have in the eye socket moving out along there. All of the horns and everything again are sculpted really nicely up here on the top of the frill. We have that same bluish tone showing up on this one, but we have a different, like a different variation of like a brown, it looks like, showing up here in the middle of the frill. But again, giving it a bit of a flashy look. However, I would definitely still say that this one, in my opinion, would be the female when it comes to these two ceratopsians. As you move along the course of the back, in typical Haolonggood fashion, we do have that same style to the paint, the same kind of pattern and paint scheme, just with different tones of color. And this time you can see, rather than the dark striping with the dark coloration of the body, this time we have a light striping, which is almost like a very light purplish tone that stripes and patterns along the course of the ceratopsian, which does look really cool. As you continue to move along, you do see again that on top of the dark wash that's present on this one, just like we saw on the other figure, there has been some nice, very, very light dry brushing that's been applied. And even within the darker grays, I can almost see like elements of that purplish tone, which we actually see right here on the back of the thigh, and even running along the lower part of the stomach. You can see actually some pinkish tones as well, which is pretty cool. And again, an incredibly smooth transition as you move down into the lighter tone here on the side of the stomach. As you move down into the feet definitely darken. They are absolutely a black when it comes to the coloration of the feet, because they are even darker than the coloration we have up here on the upper part of the dinosaur. The nails are painted with, again, that nice glossy black. You can really see it right there on the rear leg. And then as you move out, again, you can definitely take notice to the dark wash still highlighting all of the detail. Even on a dark coloration like this, the wash still works perfectly. You can see the cloaca and everything here on the underside. Again, more of those pinkish tones showing up here, which are really nice and subtle as far as the application of those. And then again, you can see pretty much the same thing, of course, over here on the other side. No sloppiness whatsoever. The eyes are both placed, I think, perfectly, and the ceratopsian as a whole, in my opinion, looks great. So definitely another really cool release on the part of Haolonggood. So as I said, it's probably the smallest ceratopsian we have from Haolonggood for a length from the tail to the beak, about 5 inches or around 12.5 centimeters, closing in on 13, but definitely not 13. It's just kind of a little bit over 12.5. And for a height, about 2.5 inches or around a little under 6.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Haolonggood Kosmoceratops. And you can see that they are definitely quite small overall, as you know, of course, outside of the Collect A human being, every other figure here is a bit larger. Then for another size comparison, even though this is actually a repainted version, if you do happen to have the Collect A Regaloceratops, you'll have a pretty good idea of the size of the Kosmoceratops from Haolonggood. And what's actually quite interesting, if you look at the two, my paint scheme that I had given my Regaloceratops quite a few years ago is actually kind of similar to the paint scheme on what I would say would be the male of the Kosmoceratops. You know, we've got like the reddish tones and the striping moving down. Of course, there's also a black stripe moving through the eye. You see the same thing there. Pretty funny that the paint schemes are actually pretty close to each other, but obviously a little bit different at the same time. We also have the Collect A Kosmosaurus, which, as you can see, if you do have this figure, these two are very, very similar in size. Then when it comes to other Haolonggood releases, we also have the Haolonggood Pseudoceratops, which, as you can see, is significantly larger than our Kosmoceratops. And just trying to use a few figures from Haolonggood that I know are definitely popular releases. We also have the Ouranosaurus here next to our Kosmoceratops, as well as the Haolonggood Allosaurus here, standing dangerously close to the horn of our Kosmoceratops, which you could easily take right there to the throat. We've also got the figure that was released prior to these Kosmoceratops from Haolonggood, the Telatolophus. as well as the Haolonggood Megaraptor next to the Kosmoceratops. And then one final Haolonggood comparison, we have the Pachyrhinosaurus next to our Kosmoceratops as well. I don't feel like we need to bring in like the Pentaceratops or anything like that, because that one is definitely going to be significantly larger than we have here for the Kosmoceratops. And I know the Pachyrhinosaurus was a pretty popular release from Haolonggood. So these brand new Kosmoceratops from Haolonggood are both awesome if you ask me, and I would actually say they're probably two of my favorite ceratopsians to come from Haolonggood so far. I just feel like they've done a great job on both of the sculpts, and I feel like they look a lot better in person than they did even on the original promotional images, which is always a great thing. And on top of the really nice sculpts, the paint jobs are also really well done, and the inclusion of the dark wash this time around is something that I just feel like always amps up the realism of the models and just generally gives them a higher quality look. But as a whole, again, they look very good. They've got a nice natural kind of a walking pose, nothing too out of the ordinary or crazy as far as the positioning goes. No articulation on these guys because, you know, you do sometimes have articulated jaws on Haolonggood releases, but not normally when it comes to their ceratopsians. So no articulation on these guys, but we do have just in general a really nice majestic looking ceratopsian. Again, just kind of walking through, and as always, two different paint schemes, so you've got yourself a pair of them that look really cool as they walk through together. As per usual, I recommend buying both if you can. You know, if you have to choose one over the other, of course that's always okay too, but I think it's always great to have both because it gives you that mating pair, and that's just really cool. But both of the paint schemes I think were chosen nicely. The reddish one looks very flashy, very male-ish if you ask me, especially with the reddish tones, but then again some flashiness with the blue up there in the face. And then the other one definitely has that nice dark kind of female type of a look if you ask me. Both of the paint applications are also very nicely done, nicely applied, and of course the dry brushing techniques and washes they've used help to bring the detail out in perfect fashion. So overall, I would absolutely say both of these figures are very high recommendations from me, especially again considering the species that they are and the fact that we don't get too many figures of this species. So if you are interested in picking these up for yourself, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on Lana Time Shop, because that is exactly where I purchased mine, and they got here very quickly. I was actually quite impressed with how quickly they arrived. So make sure you check that link, go grab yourself these absolutely gorgeous Kosmoceratops, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.